In order to understand euthanasia, it would be helpful to look at, well, what it is, how it is defined, what the Church teaches about euthanasia, and why the Church teaches that. Well, simply put, euthanasia is an action that is committed or an inaction, an omission, which causes the death of a handicapped person, of a sick person, or of a dying person. Now, sometimes euthanasia is an attempt to justify the act of killing someone as a means to eliminate suffering. But as a matter of morality, no matter the reason, the Church teaches that it is morally unacceptable. It constitutes a murderous act, and it's completely contrary to what we call the dignity of the human person. Namely, that a person is born with a dignity all their own. They are of inestimable value. You can't put a value on a human life because a person is indeed priceless because they are created by God. Euthanasia is also an act that denies respect of God the Creator. Even if a person is acting in good faith, nothing changes the nature of what euthanasia is. At the very base, it is an act of murder. Now, that being said, it can be legitimate to disconnect medical procedures which are considered to be burdensome, to be dangerous, or to be extraordinary, or perhaps disproportionate to the expected outcome, such as a person recovering fully. Even where the case of death is imminent, though, it's not permitted to deny any sort of ordinary care to the person. And of course, by ordinary, we would mean anything that would be sustaining of life, such as hydration and nutrition, something that a person would need to survive. Now, why does the Church teach that? Well, those whose lives have been diminished in any way or weakened by sickness, by illness, or by moving towards death deserve special respect because we are all of equal dignity as human persons. We should help them as Christians ourselves to live normal lives. That can be very difficult in the world in which we live today that pretty much says, well, you are what you do. Well, we don't believe that. We believe that we are who God has created us to be, and our value is not calculated by our worth in society, what we can produce. Who we are is more important than what we do. And so we are called to help that person live a normal life, even if they cannot do for themselves. Of course, if we are to practice euthanasia, it also means that we are denying the opportunity of what we call redemptive suffering. Namely, that it is possible for a person to unite their suffering with the suffering of our Lord Jesus Christ, who indeed suffered for us. It was His suffering, His death, and His resurrection that brought about our salvation. And we believe firmly that any time a person suffers, they can offer that suffering and unite it with Christ's suffering. And that has a redemptive value. It helps the person to grow in holiness. And likewise, we who are caring for those who are ill in any way or those who are dying can also unite our suffering to them as well. Redemptive suffering. In discontinuing a extraordinary means or a disproportionate means or something that is burdensome or dangerous, it's important in our intent that we don't intend the death of the person. We talk about removing a respirator or something like that, the only thing that is keeping a person alive. If they had no respiration, they would not be able to breathe upon their own. By removing the respirator, we wouldn't say that we want the person to die. That's not an act of euthanasia. But rather, removing something like a respirator, we would want to help to make the person more comfortable. We hear about palliative care or hospice. We're trying to make the person more comfortable. And death is not what is intended, but it is merely an effect. We do not wish for the death of someone. That is an act of euthanasia. But indeed helping someone to become more comfortable, especially if it's something that they themselves request, that is something that we certainly can do. And so death is something that we do not intend as Christians, but sometimes it is an effect that cannot be prevented. And so we as Christians are called to understand what the Church teaches fully and to follow it unreservedly.